I'm a male, and I was around 8 or 9 when this happened. Obviously, I don't remember much since I was a kid, so I had recently asked my mom what she remembered about that day. My mom was taking my sister and I to see a movie. We had decided to stop at McDonald's to kill some time. A strange guy wearing a purple suit had followed us in and had sat at a nearby table without ordering anything. After we finished eating, I had got up to go clean up my retainer in the bathroom sink. The man followed me into the bathroom and then stood between me and the door. He asked me if I wanted a juice box. I said no, but he had told me that I needed to go out to his car with him so I could pick out the flavor. My parents had drilled into my head to never ever go with a stranger, so I immediately knew what was happening. I ran past him and out of the bathroom door into the lobby, then told my mom what had happened. He had followed me out and started coming towards us. My mom stood up and started making a big scene. She had loudly asked him why he was trying to get her son to go out to his car with him. He said that he was just trying to give me a juice box, and then hurriedly left and then got into his car and drove off. Luckily, there was a police car in the parking lot, so we had waved down a cop and told him what had happened. Unfortunately, the man in the purple suit was long gone by this point. I had forgotten most of what had happened before and after the incident, but I still vividly remember the terror I felt being alone in the bathroom with him blocking the door. It was only 10 to 20 seconds, but I'll never forget that uneasy feeling. I'm really grateful that my mom was such a rock star and that she knew how to make a scene to scare him off. I have no idea what would have happened to me had I actually gone out there with him. I'm a 16-year-old female. This traumatizing story happened less than a week ago, when my younger 13-year-old sister, my parents, and I had visited our family in Poland for Easter. Our family lives in a rural area, and not much happens, so we weren't really expecting this horrifying event to unfold. We were planning on staying for just over a week, and the story is set on our 4th day. One afternoon after all the Easter festivity, my sister and I, along with our 2 cousins, one being a 17-year-old female and the other a 12-year-old male, had decided to go on a bike ride around town, with the exception of my sister, who was on an electric scooter. After riding around from park to park for an hour or so, my sister and younger cousin had gotten hungry and had asked us to go to McDonald's. Thinking nothing of it, my cousin and I had agreed, not really knowing what we were getting ourselves into. The ride was only around 5 minutes and we arrived in no time. We all entered the McDonald's restaurant and had ordered our food. As soon as we sat down, my older cousin had pointed at a suspicious-looking man who looked around 40 to 50 years old, and he was following this boy who probably just turned 18. They walked into the McDonald's, and the boy must have told the staff about the situation because the man had just gotten kicked out within the first minute. The man then went over to what I can only assume was his group of friends. There were 4 of them. They had a small chat, and then he walked away. We had shrugged it off and just ate our meals. After we finished, my sister and younger cousin had proposed to go into the outdoor play area. You know, the one that's meant for people under the height of 4 foot. Although we were all over the height limit, we had decided to go to the very top, which was filled with around 3 boys, most likely at the age of 12. After a while, my sister had looked out the window, and she had saw the same man that previously got kicked out. She could tell it was him by his outfit. He was wearing a black and red hoodie which had the word psycho printed on the front, as well as jeans and a marijuana-covered hat. He looked kind of creepy, with his nose being bent to one side, had a lazy eye, and an unshaved prickly beard. We explained to the other boys about what happened, and one of them began to cry. They were clearly very scared. The man started circling and almost looked like he was searching for something, as he was looking around, clearly intrigued. I don't know what came over my sister, maybe a moment of bravery or something like that, but she had got the genius idea of coming up to the man and then spraying him with a water gun. I had then pleaded with her not to do it, but she had still proceeded with her plan. My cousins and I watched her as she grabbed her pink water gun that's just the size of her hand and left. She went up to the man and then looked as she was going to try to talk to him, and she probably decided not to and then took a step back. He looked at her, but that didn't stop her from shooting his shoes and legs with water. He looked her dead in the eye angrily and started to walk towards her. She then quickly ran up the play place and came back to us. The man just carried on looking around. My sister must have been unsatisfied with the outcome, because less than 2 minutes later she had decided to do it again, this time with our younger cousin. They got out of the play area and walked towards him. The man also started walking. He wasn't able to see my cousin and sister as they were now behind him. He walked inside the McDonald's and had called over his group of mates who were eating. As soon as he got to them, he had started talking and they had all got up to see what was happening. The group had started running to a field that was less than about 15 feet away from the McDonald's, and the man slowly walked behind them. My sister and cousin took this as a green light to take their bike and scooter and ride to them. My sister was now shoulder to shoulder with this man, and our cousin was right beside her. We couldn't really see what was going on, but both my sister and cousin started riding back to us as soon as possible. Once they had made it, they had threw their bike and scooter into the ground, almost breaking the weak handlebars. They then climbed up and then told us something shocking. They had saw the man's group brutally beating up 2 men who looked almost dead, their faces covered in blood. The 2 men were getting picked up, punched and kicked in the head. All 4 of us then looked out of the play place window, and sure enough, there were 2 limp, bloody bodies laying on the grass, and the perpetrators were already making their escape. I don't really know if I can even call it an escape, because they were really just walking casually away, as if there weren't any witnesses all around them. I don't know who called them, but the police arrived shortly after. We all thought that they were long gone at that point, and while the police officers were inspecting the bodies on the ground, all the kids, including us, had left the play place. My cousins and I tried to calm them down whilst my sister went somewhere else, presumably to get her scooter. Shortly after, the 4 of us left the McDonald's and then rode to another playground. That's when my sister then came up to me and then said something that chilled me to my core. When I was getting my scooter, I saw the man with the marijuana hat again behind the McDonald's. We locked eyes and then he did this. My sister had put her finger up to her lips and then did the shush gesture. I don't know why, but just the sheer thought of this dangerous individual trying to say something to my little sister really terrified me. I'm a 17-year-old female, and I recently quit my job at a fast food chain after working there for almost 10 months. This story is part of the reason why I didn't want to stay much longer. I worked the drive-thru from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. almost every weekend. Seeing regulars was not uncommon for me, and I would even memorize most of their orders and fill it out as soon as I heard their voice. Most were very polite and occasionally tipped, but on one particularly busy day, there was an unfamiliar, weary presence. I had just started my shift, so I was running food to the window. I had made eye contact with the man at the window in his car and immediately felt uneasy. I brushed it off because we were busy and I had work to do. Later on, once my manager set up my cash drawer, I took over drive-thru orders, payments, etc. There were lots of orders, so I wasn't paying special attention to specific voices or menu choices, but one had caught my attention. It was a low, hesitant voice asking for a sandwich. I give the man the total and he waits in line. He arrives at the window and it's the man from earlier. I assumed that he just forgot to order something. Now, his car was pretty low to the ground, so he had to extend his arm out to hand me his debit card. As he does this, he then mumbles something under his breath without even breaking eye contact with me. I'm sorry, what was that? I question him.
I said you're looking beautiful today.
At this point, I'm super uncomfortable. Not only do I have a boyfriend, but I'm also underage and I'm not interested at all. Oh, thank you, I said nervously. I then handed him the bag of food and then quickly shut the window until he drove away. I half-heartedly complained about him to some coworkers, all male as we usually do with weird customers, but I still had a strange gut feeling. A little while later, when the average wait in our line was about 10 minutes, I hear a familiar voice over the mic asking for a cup of water. It was low but agitated and forceful. I saw his face through the windshield and walked away from the window so that my manager would take care of him. This happened a couple of more times that day, asking for straws and other free things. At that point, I was pretty sure that he was just trying to look at me. I was so frustrated with him and the rest of my workday that I went to the bathroom and just cried. I usually have pretty thick skin when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I was just so over it. The rest of the night went on and I didn't see him again. I thought that I'd probably never see him again. That is, until my very last shift at the store a few months later. We weren't very busy that evening, but it was much later in the day than the first encounter. I didn't recognize the voice, but I had immediately recognized his face and car. I just swallowed my pride and took his payment, trying not to make eye contact. I had called my manager and he said he would give the food out for me. As suspected, the man was back in the drive-thru not long afterwards for a cup of water. This time I knew better. I had sent a male coworker to the window to get it for him since I was busy anyway. Once given the water, the man had actually asked my coworker,
"So you guys close at 11 now, right?"
I was so glad that I was getting picked up by my mom that night. I was constantly looking out the windows, just making sure that he wasn't out there waiting for me. Call me paranoid, but I listened to enough true crime to be overly cautious. Okay, so just to preface this was on Friday the 27th, and my friend and I had smoked some weed before going out to eat and catching a movie. So my friend and I are in line at Burger King and trying to decide if we want to split a meal or get separate meals. My friend orders her food, and when I get the order, I get straight up asked if we had smoked weed. My first thought and question is that really noticeable? Now, I could barely hear this guy because he was speaking low, but he was asking about a certain strain that I could really care less about. But it then gets to the point where he tells me how much I could get for a certain price point, which I said I would keep in mind. Now, my friend and I didn't spray any perfume or body spray on us. We normally do, but we just completely forgot to at this time. I get to the table that my friend had picked out, and I had started telling her about what had just happened. Not even a minute after I sit down does this guy come over and pass me a folded up napkin of this weed to sample. Now, my friend and I are just shocked at this point, and we begin talking about this. I end up putting the napkin in my bra because it was the only place I could. I had no pockets. The guy ends up coming to our table 3 to 4 more times within the span of about 15 to 20 minutes. When I went up to get my food before these other encounters occurred, this guy had let me know that he had got off at 7:30 p.m., then asked if we wanted to hang out with him. I had straight up said that my friend and I were on a date and were going to see a movie straight after this. After I got my food, the guy had stopped at our table to ask what movies were playing and what his name was. He just spoke to me, but not my friend, and I could really tell that this guy was trying to get some information on me. Now, I'm a very private person, and I'm also a very cautious person too. I could tell that this guy was trying something, and I acted dumb, even though I knew what was going on. My friend had noticed that after the last time he came over, this guy was staring at me every time he passed by. I could tell that he was staring at me because of the windows that had made a reflection because my back was to him. It got to the point where I told my friend that we needed to hurry because this was really making me uncomfortable. So we had finished quickly and then left. Now, my friend and I did originally go to the movie theater, but we decided to watch the movie at home because of how busy it was. When we had decided to watch the movie at my place, we had tried to hurry and leave because of the time, and that guy was going to be getting off work any minute. I don't think I'll be going to that Burger King anytime soon because my hair color is also blue. It's very noticeable, and not many people have that color in my town. Plus, it's a small town. I really hope to never meet this guy again, and if I do, I may have to have some backbone, especially if he acts like he did this time. It might not be a very interesting story to some of you, but that's my creepy encounter at Burger King. I had been staying at a motel while on a business trip in Mobile, Alabama. One day I decided to walk to Zaxby's for lunch. It was only a short distance across the street from the other motel near a pretty busy intersection. So as a young woman, I felt pretty secure doing that in the middle of the day. As I was just exiting the motel's parking lot about to begin to cross the street, I had noticed an older style rusty orange colored perhaps Chevy Chevelle or maybe Oldsmobile Cutlass. Sorry, I don't really know old cars, but it had pulled into the empty parking lot right across the street, exactly where I would be heading if I had stayed on my current trajectory. I remember thinking that it was a weird place to park your car because he had parked the vehicle only in the entrance of this empty parking lot, not in a parking spot. Then I noticed a tall, heavier set man step out of the driver's seat and then walk to the trunk, open the trunk, and then stand to the side of the open trunk and just look at me as I'm getting closer and then closing the distance between us. Every alarm bell is going off in my head as that's a really bizarre thing he's doing. But at this point, I'm exactly halfway across the street in the middle of the road. I then realize that I'm going to have to be the asshole who very obviously changes her course to avoid walking any closer to this strange man. I decided that I'd take the chance of looking like an asshole and then immediately U-turn my body back to the motel side of the street. During this time of changing my direction, the man then gets back into his car and pulls across the street directly in front of me and into the entrance of the motel parking lot that I'm about to pass, and he then looks straight at me with his window about 2 inches down. After seeing the way he's looking at me, I then very quickly change my directions yet again, and I then quickly walk back across the street and make a beeline for the Zaxby's. For anyone wondering, Zaxby's is a chicken tenders fast food chain. Anyways, anyone watching me would have witnessed me zigzagging across the street about 3 times if memory serves me. Anyway, I didn't get kidnapped, but I really think that was his intention, and that creeped me the hell out. This happened a few weeks ago, and it was so bizarre that I still think about it every so often. Anyway, I was babysitting my nieces who are 8 and 10 since my sister was going out to meet this other girl at a coffee shop. I had offered to babysit my nieces since her house was nice and I didn't have anything else to do that night, so I just decided why not. At first, we had just watched movies and played some video games together. Later into the night, I had noticed they didn't eat anything, and so I asked them if they were hungry. They both replied no at first. That's when I said that I can make a quesadilla for them or anything else they want. They still replied no. However, when I mentioned pizza, they immediately said yes. Of course they would. Well, bad idea that night. When I called the local Pizza Hut, I had ordered 2 large pizzas to be delivered. Keep in mind that I'd went outside to make this phone call, quite loudly I should say, because it was dead silent outside. I only went outside because I had noticed a bag on the street and I thought it was mine or somebody else's. It was just trash when I looked closely at it. I'm assuming this was the neighbor's trash bag. Well, 20 minutes go by and I hear a doorbell ring. It was the Pizza Hut delivery girl. I paid her in cash and I took the pizzas to the kitchen where my nieces were eating at. This is when the weird stuff happens. Not even 10 minutes go by and I hear the doorbell ring again. I was kind of skeptical at first and then looked out the window. It was hard to see much of anything by this point. I had opened the door only to be greeted by an old man with a pizza box in his hand. He then says to me,
"Hello, son. I got your pizza that you ordered."
I tried to answer in a way that would divert the situation. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't order any pizza. You must have got the wrong location." That's when I tried to close the door, but he had pushed his hand hard on the door.
"Are you sure?"
he replied. I then firmly replied back, "Yes," and then closed the door. I thought that was the end of that, until one of my nieces then told me, "Why is there a man just standing outside our house?" I was really confused, but my heart had started to pound when I thought it was the same old man from earlier. I was right. It was the same old man standing outside the house with the pizza box still in his hand. I was absolutely livid. I opened the door furiously and then yelled at him that I would call the cops immediately. He ran off. My sister arrived 2 hours later and I told her of what happened. She looked immediately concerned and then asked who it was. I told her it was some old man who had impersonated a pizza delivery worker. I don't know what she did after I told her. I'm not sure if she called the cops to file a report or not. But damn, what a creepy experience. Hey everyone, that's about it for today's stories. If you have your own story that you would like to send, you can send it in at southerncannibal.com, or you can email it at southerncannibalstories@gmail.com. I look forward to telling your story. Have a good night or good day, everyone. And remember to always